The afternoon sun felt warm on his skin, a gentle kind of heat that made you want to close your eyes and just breathe. For him, these were the golden hours. The long, stressful ones at the office, the memories of crowded and dusty places from his old job. The constant hum of the world's noise, all of it faded away here. At the edge of the neighborhood park, his little girl, just 4 years old, was his entire world in these moments. She was on the swing, her small hands gripping the chains. "Higher, Daddy, higher!" She squealed, her feet kicking towards the sky. He pushed her gently, each thrust timed to her laughter. "Okay, pilot," he said, smiling. "But we are not going to the moon today. Just to the top of that tree, see?" He pointed at a tall oak, and she nodded, her curls bouncing. He was a man who understood tension. He used to work for the army, not as a soldier who carried a big gun, but as a person who carried big secrets. His mind was trained to notice things, patterns, details, changes in behavior. It was a quiet job with a loud importance. Now, he used those skills for a tech company, solving puzzles of a different kind. But here, in the park, the only puzzle was how to make the swing go the perfect height for maximum giggles. He sat on the wooden bench, watching her. His phone, a simple black device, sat beside him. It buzzed once, a soft vibration against the wood. He glanced at it. The screen showed a reminder for later that evening. Secure check-in minus 2,100 hours. It was a regular thing, a short video call with his old boss from his army days. They talked about world news, about old friends, about how his unique skills were still valued, even from far away. It was a part of his past that gently touched his present, nothing more. He swiped the reminder away and put the phone face down. Not now. This time was for his daughter. From the corner of his eye, he saw slow movement. A white and blue patrol car was cruising down the quiet road that circled the park. It was going slower than the usual traffic. His father, a wise and gentle man, had given him advice years ago. "Son, always know your surroundings. Not because you're looking for trouble, but so trouble doesn't surprise you." The words echoed in his head now, as they often did. The patrol car came to a complete stop. He didn't stare, but he saw them. 2 officers in uniform sat inside. The one in the passenger seat was looking right at him. It was a long look, the kind that felt heavy. The man felt a familiar, cold trickle in his stomach. It was a feeling he knew too well, a feeling that had nothing to do with guilt and everything to do with history. He took a slow, deep breath, filling his lungs with the warm park air. He pushed the feeling down. He was just a dad in a park. That was all. "Daddy, watch me," his daughter shouted. She had jumped off the swing and was running towards the small slide. "I'm watching Superstar," he called back, his voice warm and steady. He kept his eyes on her, giving the patrol car no more of his attention. Maybe they were just taking a break. Maybe they were watching a squirrel. He wanted to believe that, but the car doors opened. Both officers got out. They adjusted their belts, said a few words to each other, and then started walking. Not towards the path, not towards their car. For something, they walked straight towards his bench. Their steps were casual, but their path was direct. The sunny afternoon seemed to shrink just a little, the sounds of the park growing distant. He didn't move from the bench. He made sure his hands were visible, resting on his knees. He kept a soft smile on his face for his daughter, who was now climbing the ladder to the slide. Inside, his mind, that trained, observant mind, switched gears. It wasn't panic. It was assessment. Asterisk 2 officers. One taller, one with a mustache. Park is empty except for us. My car is the only one in the lot. Rental plates. Remember the details. Stay calm. Asterisk the officers stopped a few feet in front of him. The taller one, whose name tag read Simmons, gave a small, tight nod. "Afternoon," he said. His voice was flat, like he was reading from a card. "Good afternoon, officers," the man replied, keeping his tone polite and neutral. Officer Simmons's eyes didn't meet his for long. They swept over him, his clean T-shirt, his casual jeans, then over to his daughter, then to the parked car. "This your little girl?" Simmons asked. "Yes, sir." "That's my daughter." He made sure his pride was clear in his voice. Asterisk, I am her father. This is my role here. Asterisk, the other officer, Darnell, had stepped slightly to the side, his gaze lingering on the rental car with its bright yellow license plate from another state. It was a temporary car, while his own was in the shop, a simple fact that now felt like a neon sign. Simmons looked back at him. "You live around here?" The question was simple, but its intent was clear. It was a question meant to establish if he belonged. The man answered truthfully, giving his address a few streets over. "Mind if we see some ID?" The request hung in the air. He knew he didn't have to show it. He hadn't done anything wrong. He wasn't suspected of a crime. But he also knew that refusing often made things worse, especially when his daughter was here, playing innocently, 20 feet away. The priority was her safety and her peace. "Not at all," he said, moving slowly. He pulled his wallet from his back pocket, extracted his driver's license, and handed it to Officer Simmons. The officer took it, looked at it, then looked back at him, comparing the photo to his face. "What brings you to the park on a weekday afternoon?" Officer Darnell asked, joining the conversation. He had moved closer to the bench dot. The man kept his eyes on Simmons, who held his ID. "It's a beautiful day. I finished work early. I promised my girl some swing time." He shrugged, a simple fatherly gesture. "That's all." Simmons held on to the license. He didn't hand it back. "We're going to need to run this. Make sure everything's clear." The man felt his daughter's eyes on him. She was at the top of the slide, watching the men in uniform talk to her daddy. He gave her a big, reassuring smile and a thumbs up. She smiled back, then went down the slide with a whoop. He looked at Officer Simmons. The peaceful golden hour was over. The game had changed, and he had to play it very, very carefully. All he wanted was to go back to pushing the swing. The officer's words, "Make sure everything's clear," sat in the air between them. They weren't asking. It was a statement. The dad watched as Officer Simmons turned and walked slowly back to the patrol car, holding his driver's license like a piece of evidence. The other officer, Darnell, stayed put. He didn't stand directly in front of the bench, but he positioned himself off to the side, his body angled so he could watch both the man and the little girl on the playground. The silence felt thick. The man could hear the metallic chirp of the police radio from the open car door, a burst of static and codes that meant nothing to most people, but everything to him. His old training kicked in, quiet and automatic. Breathe, observe, do not escalate. He kept his posture relaxed, his hands on his knees. He made sure not to make any sudden moves. His eyes stayed soft, even though his mind was now sharp and clear, recording every detail. "That's a nice ride," Officer Darnell said, nodding toward the rental car in the nearly empty lot. His tone was casual, but the comment wasn't friendly. It was a probe. "Thank you," the man replied, his voice even. "My car's in the shop. It's just a rental." "Long way from home," Darnell observed, squinting at the out-of-state plate. "Not too far. Just a few hours' drive." He kept his answers short, truthful, and gave no extra information. He knew how this worked. He had seen it before, felt it before. The goal was to get through it, to get his license back, and to get his daughter home without her seeing her daddy upset. From the playground, his daughter's voice chimed. "Daddy, Come push me again." He turned his head and gave her his full, warm smile. "1 second, sweetheart. You try spinning on the merry-go-round." He needed her to be busy, to be just a little farther away from this conversation that was starting to feel like a dark cloud. She giggled and ran to the round, metal platform. He watched her for a second, his heart aching with a love so fierce it almost pushed the cold feeling out of his stomach. Almost, Officer Simmons was taking a long time. He was back in the passenger seat of the patrol car, talking on the radio, typing on the computer mounted near the dash. The man knew the drill. They were running his name, his date of birth, his license number. They were looking for warrants, for tickets, for any reason at all. After what felt like forever, but was only a few minutes, Officer Simmons got out of the car and walked back. He didn't look happy. He looked like a man who hadn't found what he was looking for. He stopped in front of the bench and held out the license. For a second, the dad felt a wave of relief. It was over. They'd seen he was just a guy, a dad, a taxpayer with a clean record. He reached for his license. "Thank you, officer." But Simmons didn't let go. His fingers held on to the other end of the plastic card. "Everything checks out," Simmons said, his eyes locked on the dad's face. "But we've had some reports in this area. You fit the description of someone we're looking for." The words were a classic line. The man had heard stories, read reports. His heart sank. It wasn't over. "What description is that?" he asked, keeping his voice polite but direct. "Just a description," Darnell said, moving a step closer. The space around the bench felt smaller. "We're going to need to take a look inside your vehicle." There it was. The request had become a demand. The man felt his pulse pick up, a steady drum in his ears. He thought of his gym bag on the back seat, his work laptop, his daughter's stuffed elephant, his private things. He also knew his rights. He knew they had no probable cause. A description that they wouldn't even specify was not a reason to search his car. He took a slow breath. He could see his daughter from here. She was sitting on the merry-go-round, kicking her feet slowly, watching the birds. He had to keep this calm. For her. "I don't consent to a search of my vehicle, officers," he said. The words came out firm, but not loud, not challenging. Just a clear statement of fact, like saying the sky is blue. The change in the two men was instant. Their casual posture stiffened. Officer Simmons finally released the driver's license, and the man tucked it back into his wallet, then into his pocket. A small act of reclaiming control. "It'll be a lot easier if you just cooperate," Simmons said, his voice lower now, a hint of steel in it. "I have cooperated," the man replied. "I've given you my ID. I've answered your questions. I'm here with my 4-year-old daughter, having a picnic." He gestured to the small, forgotten lunch bag on the bench. "I'm not the person you're looking for, and you have no reason to search my car." Officer Darnell took another step. He was now well within the man's personal space. The dad could see the polished badge, the name tag, the subtle wear on the officer's uniform shirt. He could also see where the officer's right hand now rested, casually, on the handle of his service weapon. It wasn't a threat, not officially. It was a posture, a show of authority, a reminder of who had the power. The air seemed to vanish from the park. The sound of the birds, the distant traffic, his daughter's humming it, all faded into a dull roar. The only things that existed were the two officers in front of him and the little girl behind him. "Don't make this difficult," Officer Darnell said, his voice almost a whisper. It was loaded with meaning. Difficult could mean so many things. And then, from the merry-go-round, a small, worried voice. "Daddy?" His daughter had stopped spinning. She was looking right at them, her little face confused and starting to crumple. She saw the strange men standing close to her daddy. She saw the serious looks. She felt the tension, even if she didn't understand it. That sound, her tiny voice filled with worry, did something to him. It cut through the fear, cut through the training, cut through everything. A protective fire, calm but absolute, ignited in his chest. This was no longer about him and these officers. This was about her. He looked away from Officer Darnell's hand on his gun. He looked past Officer Simmons's stern face. He looked directly at his daughter and gave her the most confident, loving smile he could muster. "It's okay, baby. It's all okay." Then he turned his head back to the officers. His eyes were different now. The polite, cooperative mask was gone. In its place was a gaze that was calm, steady, and held a depth of authority that didn't come from a badge. It came from a life of handling real pressure. He spoke, and his voice was quiet, but it carried a weight that made both officers pause. "You are frightening my daughter," he said, each word clear and measured. "Your badge numbers are 714 and 892. This ends now." He didn't wait for a reply. He didn't argue. He simply stood up, slowly and smoothly, showing his empty hands. He turned his back on them, a move that felt huge, and walked the 20 feet to the merry-go-round. He knelt down in front of his little girl. "Hey, pilot," he said softly, brushing her hair from her face. "We're going to go home and get some ice cream, okay? Our park time is all done for today." She nodded, her little arms going around his neck. He picked her up, holding her close, feeling her heart beating against his chest. With her in his arms, he walked past the 2 officers, who were still standing by the bench, seemingly frozen by his sudden, calm takeover of the situation. He buckled his daughter safely into her car seat, kissing her forehead. He got into the driver's seat, started the car, and drove slowly out of the park. In the rearview mirror, he saw the 2 officers still standing there, watching him leave, their afternoon routine completely disrupted by a man who had simply refused to be afraid. The drive home was very quiet. The little girl, sensing her daddy's mood, stayed quiet in the back seat, hugging her stuffed elephant. The dad kept his eyes on the road, his hands steady at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel. But inside, he was not steady at all. A storm was raging. He felt a hot anger first. It was a clean, sharp feeling. How dare they? How dare they turn a sunny afternoon into something dark and scary? How dare they make his little girl's face fill with worry because of their what? Boredom? Power? Prejudice? He gripped the wheel a little tighter. He replayed every word, every look, the way the officer's hand had rested on his gun. The implied threat in the quiet voice saying, "Don't make this difficult." But under the anger was a colder, deeper feeling. It was fear. Not for himself right then, but for what could have happened. A different move, a louder word, a more nervous reaction from him. Things could have gone wrong so fast. He knew stories. Everyone knew stories. That cold feeling was for every other father, every other son who didn't have the training to stay calm, who didn't have the strange luck to walk away. He pulled into his driveway, the familiar sight of his home doing little to calm him. He helped his daughter out of the car. "Ice cream time, remember?" he said, forcing a cheerful tone. She nodded, a small smile returning. He got her settled at the kitchen table with a small bowl of chocolate ice cream. The simple, happy task of sprinkles and a spoon helped him breathe. He watched her, her world already correcting itself, the scary men at the park being replaced by sweet treats. He was so thankful for that. Protecting her innocence was the only victory that mattered right then. But as she ate, his mind went back to work. The training from his old life didn't just switch off. It was a part of him. Assess, document, plan. He walked into his home office, A small, neat room with a bookshelf and a sturdy desk. He closed the door softly so his daughter wouldn't hear. He took his phone from his pocket. His hand, he noticed, was trembling now that the adrenaline was fading. He opened the voice memo app. He had started recording after the officer took his license, sliding his phone into his shirt pocket with the microphone facing out. He hadn't been sure it would pick everything up, but he had to try. He pressed play. His own polite voice came out first, then the flat tones of the officers. He listened to the whole thing. The request for ID, the long pause, the demand to search the car, his own calm refusal, the officer's whispered threat, his own final firm statement. Your badge numbers are 714 and 892. This ends now. The recording was clear. It was all there. The lack of any real reason. The escalation. The fear in his own voice when he spoke to his daughter. It was a perfect, awful record of what had happened. He saved the file. He made 2 backup copies, sending one to a secure cloud folder he rarely used. He wrote down everything he could remember in a text document on his computer. The time, the exact location, the weather, what the officers wore, the words they used, the model of the patrol car, everything. He was building a case file, not because he knew what he would do with it, but because his mind needed to do it. It was a way of taking control of the memory. Then he looked at the clock. It was almost time. The secure check-in. The regular call with his old boss. He thought about canceling. He didn't feel like talking. He felt raw and tired. But something stopped him. This wasn't just a social call. The person he was about to talk to wasn't just a friend. She was a connection to a world of strict rules, an accountability, of consequences for those who abused their power. He thought about the 2 officers, probably finishing their shift, maybe even joking about the difficult guy at the park. He thought about them doing the same thing tomorrow to someone else. Someone who might not walk away. He knew what his father would say. His father, a gentle man who had lived through much worse, always said, "Son, if you see a wrong, and you are in a position to make it right, you have a responsibility. Not for revenge, for balance." He took a long, slow breath. He knew what he had to do. This wasn't about getting even. This was about that cold fear he felt. This was about making sure the next dad at the park could just push the swing in peace. He waited until his daughter was busy watching her favorite cartoon, wrapped in a blanket on the sofa. He kissed the top of her head. "Daddy has a quick work call, okay? I'll be right in my office." She just nodded, her eyes on the colorful screen. He went into his office and closed the door again. He opened his laptop and clicked through the special, encrypted software. It took a minute to connect. The screen resolved into the familiar, sharp face of a woman in her 50s, her hair in a neat bun, wearing a simple sweater. She was sitting in what looked like a home library. This was the lieutenant colonel, his former superior. To him, she was Valerie. "Hey there," she said, a small smile on her face. "How's the civilian life treating you? How's my favorite little pilot?" They talked for a few minutes. He asked about her dog. She asked about his work. It was normal, easy. But she was sharp, the sharpest person he knew. She had spent decades reading people, hearing what they weren't saying. About 5 minutes in, she paused. She leaned closer to her screen, her eyes narrowing just a fraction. "Okay," she said, her tone shifting from friendly to professional. It was a subtle change, but he heard it. "What's wrong?" "You're talking to me, but you're someplace else." "What happened?" He was silent for a moment. He hadn't planned how to say it. "I had an incident today," he started, his voice sounding rough to his own ears. "What kind of incident?" Her voice was calm, clear. It was the voice that used to guide him through complex, dangerous situations overseas. At the park, with my daughter, 2 local patrol officers. He told her. He kept the story short, just the facts. The ID check. The illegal demand to search his car. The threat. He didn't talk about his feelings. He just told her what they did and what he said. When he mentioned he had the badge numbers, her eyebrow went up. When he said he had an audio recording of the entire encounter, her posture straightened. She was no longer just his friend. She was fully the lieutenant colonel now. You have a recording. And the badge numbers. And you've documented everything since? She asked. Yes. She was quiet for a long 10 seconds. He could see her mind working, putting the pieces into a larger system he understood all too well. This is not just about you, she said finally, her voice low and serious. A pattern requires points of data. A single complaint can be ignored. A documented event from a credible source, with evidence. That becomes a data point. It can help establish a pattern. He knew what she meant. He wasn't the first. He wouldn't be the last. But maybe he could be a point of data that made a difference. What do you need from me? He asked. Send me everything, she said. The audio file. Your written notes. Do it through the secure portal, not regular email. Label it formally. Then, you will likely get a call from the Department of Justice, Civil Rights Division. They may contact the local police internal affairs as well. You will tell them exactly what you told me. You will provide the evidence. And then, she said, her gaze steady on the screen, you let the system work. It's slow. It's bureaucratic. But it does work. And it works better with good evidence. He nodded. He felt a heavy tiredness, but also a sense of relief. He had done the right thing by walking away at the park. Now he was doing the next right thing. Thank you, Valerie, he said. Don't thank me, she replied, a firm look in her eyes. You did the hard part. You kept your cool. You protected your child. You got the proof. Now, go give that little girl a hug. We'll handle the rest. The call ended. He sat in the quiet office for a moment, listening to the sound of the cartoon laughter from the living room. The storm inside him had settled. The anger was still there, but it had a purpose now. The fear was still there, but it was joined by a small, steady flicker of hope. He had passed the problem to people who could actually do something about it. He stood up, walked to the door, and opened it. The sound of his daughter's laugh washed over him. He went to the sofa, scooped her up in his arms, and held her tight, breathing in the sweet smell of her hair. For now, his job was right here. The days that followed felt strange. Life went on with its normal rhythm-making breakfast, going to work, playing with his daughter in the backyard instead of the park. But underneath the surface, the man was waiting. He had done what his old boss asked. He had sent the audio file, his detailed notes, the time and place, everything, through the secure channel. After that, there was nothing but silence. It felt like he had thrown a heavy stone into a deep, dark well and heard no splash dot. He wondered if anything would happen at all. Maybe the system was too big, too slow. Maybe his complaint would just become another piece of paper in a dusty file. The thought was discouraging. He tried to put it out of his mind, focusing on the smell of grass when he pushed his daughter on the backyard swing, the sound of her stories about her toy animals. Then, about a week later, his personal phone rang. It was an unknown number with a Washington, D.C. area code. His stomach did a small flip. He answered. Hello, is this the man? A professional, calm voice asked. It was a woman. Yes, speaking. My name is Agent Wilkins, with the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice. We received a referral concerning an incident you reported. Do you have a few minutes to speak?" He took a breath. "Yes, I do." The call was formal and thorough. Agent Wilkins asked him to tell the story from the beginning. She listened without interrupting. He could hear the gentle tap of a keyboard in the background. She asked very specific questions. When Officer Darnell moved closer, you said his hand rested on his weapon. Can you describe his posture? Was his hand on the grip, or just near it? When you mentioned their badge numbers, what was their reaction? Did they ever state a specific crime they were investigating? Her questions showed she knew what she was looking for: proof of a threat, proof of intimidation, proof that there was no real reason for any of it. He answered everything calmly, sticking to the facts. It felt good to tell it to someone whose job was to listen. "We have the audio file," Agent Wilkins said. "It's very clear. Thank you for your thoroughness. We will be opening an inquiry. This will involve contacting the Internal Affairs Department of the local police force. You may hear from them as well. Do you consent to us sharing your documentation with them?" He agreed. He wanted it all out in the open. "The process is not fast," she warned him, her voice kind but direct. "But it is thorough. We will be in touch." A few days later, a call came from a local number. It was a sergeant from the police department's Internal Affairs Unit. His voice was cautious, neutral. He asked many of the same questions, but the tone was different. There was a defensiveness underneath, a weariness. The man told the story again, just the facts. "And you're certain you heard Officer Darnell say, 'Don't make this difficult'?" The sergeant asked. "I am certain. It's on the recording you have." There was a pause on the line. "I see. Well, we will be conducting our own review. Thank you for your time." After that, the waiting continued. But now it felt different. The stone had finally hit the water. Ripples were starting to spread. He learned about the next steps not from any official call, but from the local news. A small article appeared online. DOJ reviewing practices of local police department. It mentioned no names, but it said the review had been prompted by a recent, well-documented complaint that had sparked a wider look into department procedures. His heart hammered as he read it. This was bigger than just his afternoon. His point of data was being connected to others. Then one evening, he got a short, secure message from his old boss. It read, "The file has teeth. IA found prior, similar complaints against both officers. Unsubstantiated due to lack of evidence. Your recording provided the evidence. Hold tight." That message changed everything. It wasn't just about him. Those officers had a history. They had done this before, maybe in ways that were harder to prove. But they had picked the wrong person on the wrong day. They had picked a father whose #1 job was to protect and who knew how to document a threat. Weeks turned into a month. He avoided the park. He and his daughter found new adventures: the library, the science center, walks by the river. He never saw the two officers around town. He didn't know if they were still working. Then a bigger news story broke. It was on the front page of the local paper's website. 2 officers suspended amid federal civil rights inquiry. Their names were there: Officers Simmons and Darnell. The article said they were suspended with pay pending the outcome of investigations by both the DOJ and Internal Affairs. It mentioned a pattern of conduct was being examined. The man read the article sitting at his kitchen table, the morning light coming through the window. He felt no joy. He felt a heavy sense of gravity. Careers were hanging in the balance. Families were affected. But he thought of the fear in his daughter's voice, saying, "Daddy?" He thought of the officer's hand on his gun. He thought of the sergeant's tired, defensive voice on the phone. This was the consequence of a choice those officers made. They chose to turn a dad into a suspect. They chose to frighten a child. A final call came from Agent Wilkins. "The administrative process is moving forward," she said. "Based on the evidence and the prior history, the department is moving to terminate both officers. The federal case may result in civil rights charges. We will need you to be available to testify if it goes to trial, but that could be a year or more away." He thanked her. When he hung up, he walked into the living room. His daughter was building a tall, wobbly tower of blocks. She looked up at him. "Daddy, are you sad?" He knelt down beside her. "No, sweetheart," he said, and he realized it was mostly true. He wasn't sad. He wasn't happy. He was resolved. "Daddy just finished some important grown-up work. It's all done now. Can we play?" she asked. He smiled a real full smile for the first time in weeks. "Yeah," he said, sitting on the floor. "Let's play." "What are we building?" "A castle for the elephants." She declared Dot as he helped her place a block. His mind was quiet. The storm was over. The ripples were still moving, changing things in ways he might never fully see. But his own part was done. He had protected his child, and then he had told the truth. Now, he was just a dad on the floor, building an elephant castle, listening to the sound of his daughter's perfect, fearless laughter. The first cool breezes of autumn were blowing through the park, swirling the fallen leaves into little golden tornadoes. It had been almost a year since that sunny, terrible afternoon. For a long time, the man had avoided this place. They had found other spots, the Riverwalk, the Children's Museum, their own backyard. But his daughter had started asking about the big slide, the one that was twirly. She remembered the good parts. He wanted her to remember only the good parts, Dot. So, one Saturday, he suggested it. "Want to go try the park again? The big slide?" She had nodded, her eyes wide. "Yes, and the swings." His stomach had tightened a little, an old instinct. But he pushed it down. He would not let those men, or the memory of them, steal this place from his little girl. They drove there, the same route. He parked in a different spot, under a different tree dot at first. His eyes scanned automatically, looking for the white and blue cars, looking for uniforms. The park was busier this time, a couple of families having a picnic, an older man walking a dog. The ordinary sounds felt like a kind of music. He held his daughter's hand as they walked to the playground. She ran straight for the swings. "Push me, Daddy." And he did. His hands on her back, pushing gently, then a little higher. Her laughter rang out, the same sound, in the same air, but everything was different now. He felt the tension in his shoulders begin to melt away with each forward arc of the swing. The sun was warm, but the air was crisp. It was a new season. They played for a long time. On the slide, on the monkey bars, making a pile of the prettiest leaves. He was fully there with her, not just in body, but in his mind, which was finally quiet. The past year had been a slow grinding process of paperwork. Quiet updates from the lawyer the DOJ had connected him with, and the strange feeling of seeing a personal pain become a public news story. There had been a final article just a few weeks ago. It was short. Former officers plead guilty to civil rights violations. Terminated. The legal language was dry. They had accepted a plea deal. They would not be police officers ever again. They would have a record. The police chief had announced his retirement not long after. The department, the article said, was implementing new de-escalation training and a stricter policy for stops and searches. He had read it once, then closed the browser. It was over. Now in the park, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out. It was a secure message, just a few lines from his old boss. It was not about work. It was about this Doc Asterisk saw the final disposition report. Closed. You did a good thing. More than you know. The ripple effect is real. Now go enjoy the park with your pilot. VHE put the phone away and looked at his daughter, who was now trying to cartwheel in the grass. A ripple effect. He thought about that. It wasn't about winning. It was about a man named Simmons and a man named Darnell who had made a series of bad choices for what seemed like a long time and had finally been held to account. It was about a police department that had been forced to look at itself. It was about the next dad, maybe with a different job, a different car, who might just get to push the swing without a dark cloud coming over. "Daddy, watch this," his daughter yelled, attempting a somersault and tumbling over sideways. "I'm watching." That was a perfect 10. He called back. Laughing Dot, he sat down on a bench, a different bench, not the one from that day. He watched her play. The fear was gone. The anger was gone, faded into a solemn understanding of how the world could be, and a sliver of hope about how it could get better. A young mother with a toddler wandered over to the sandbox. She smiled at him, a simple, friendly smile between parents sharing a space. He smiled back easily. There was no suspicion in her eyes, and he realized there was none in his either. He was just a dad at the park. That was all he had ever wanted to be. His daughter ran over, her cheeks pinked from the cool air, and climbed onto his lap. She smelled like grass and fresh air and kid sweat. She leaned her head against his chest. "I like the park again." "Daddy," she said, her voice muffled against his shirt. He wrapped his arms around her, holding her close. His eyes stung for a second, but it was a good feeling. A feeling of repair. "Me too, baby. Me too." They sat like that for a while, watching the leaves fall. The memory of that other day was still there. It would always be there. But it was no longer a raw wound. It was a story now. A story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. A story where doing the right, hard things, staying calm, walking away, telling the truth had mattered. He would tell her the story one day when she was much older. He would tell her about being brave, even when you're scared. He would tell her about how sometimes you have to stand up for what's right, not with your fists, but with your voice and the truth. And he would tell her that in the end, love and truth are stronger than fear and bullying. But that was for later. For now, the sun was getting lower, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. "Ready to go home?" he asked, kissing the top of her head. "Can we get ice cream on the way?" He laughed, the sound easy and full. "I think that's a tradition." He stood up, lifting her with him, settling her on his hip. He grabbed her little jacket from the bench dot as they walked back to the car. Her head on his shoulder, he took one last look at the playground. The swings moved gently in the wind. The slide stood empty. It was just a park again, a place for laughter and cartwheels and perfect autumn afternoons. He buckled her into her seat, handed her stuffed elephant, and started the drive home. The rear-view mirror showed the park growing smaller behind them, a peaceful scene under the wide, open sky. He didn't look back again. His eyes were on the road ahead, leading to home, to ice cream, to the quiet, ordinary, beautiful life they had reclaimed, one swing push at a time.